You are listening to Brayford Radio. This recording was originally broadcast on the 8th of December 2016. For copyright reasons, it has always been edited to remove any music being played during the show. We hope you enjoy the recording of Formula Tom with me, Tom Cairns, Callum Hartley, Kathy Daniels and Jack Fisher. Good evening and welcome to Formula Tom on Brayford Radio this evening. Joining me this evening for the 2016 review show is Callum Hartley, Jack Fisher and Kathy Daniels. Tonight we'll be reviewing everything that's happened this year, along with Rosberg's abrupt departure from the sport and Sax Brown's arrival at McLaren as Executive Director. You guys can be involved in the show via Twitter or sending in your tweets at Brayford Radio, alternatively sending in your posts and messages through the Facebook pages of Formula Tom or Brayford Radio, and we'll share them during the hour. Okay. Well, first things first, guys. Last Friday lunchtime, a big shock. Would you say it's the big shock of 2016 in the Formula One paddock?
Yeah, I'd say it was a big shock. I mean, I didn't see it coming. I think someone put it on our chat, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And then I didn't actually. It was such a shock because he's just won the World Championship. You'd have thought, like he would be on. He's on the top of his game, so you'd have thought he'd kept going, trying to win maybe next year's title because Mercedes is obviously going to get a good car. Mm-hmm. But then that's the thing about going out on top. I remember like a couple of German footballers like Philipp Lahm, Mertesacker went out on the high, and Rosberg's done that. Yeah, because I saw a picture earlier today between him and Lucas Podolski actually. Yeah, Podolski was holding the World Cup, wasn't he?
Yeah, because he announced his. I think he's finished his German international career, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Kathy, what was your reaction to the departure?
I was completely shocked when I checked my phone, sort of saw the tweet alerts and sort of BBC breaking news saying Rosberg had retired. I was sort of like, well, am I actually reading this? Because I couldn't quite believe they'd done it. But then sort of once you sort of saw his statement and saw what he'd said at the conference where he announced it, it does make sense why he's done it. It just came as quite a shock at the time.
Jack, what's your opinion about?
I was taken aback definitely reading about it, but like Kathy says, it was, from reading what he says, you can understand it's not because he just wants to leave, it's because he wants to spend time with his family, he wants to leave on top rather than losing his championship. He wants to be up there at the top of his game and say, I'm done.
I mean, my opinion of it, I was shocked myself because my brother, I only found out because my brother sent me a WhatsApp message saying, mate, Rosberg's retired from the sport, and I was just like, what? And I looked on BBC Sport and I looked on Sky Sports, and breaking news came in saying that Rosberg has retired from Formula One. I think in terms of the timing, it's a good timing because had he not won the championship this year, he would have kept on going until he won it.
I think he would have kept on going. Maybe not too many more years, but I reckon he would have kept on going at least another 2 or 3 to try and win that championship.
Well, we know that Rosberg's going to be leaving, but the question is, who is going to partner Lewis Hamilton next year? Did you guys have any thoughts? I mean, we've got a numerous number of names.
Yeah, I saw one that was very surprising, and there was a talk of him a few years ago coming to the sport when he did a whole different sport. It was Valentino Rossi.
Okay.
He's been mentioned in the gossip columns. Obviously, he's been MotoGP world champion. A few years ago, there was talk of him maybe going to Ferrari. A few years ago, like 2007, 8, 9. There. Would it be, obviously he's got pedigree, he's got talent, but F1 and MotoGP are completely different sports, so would that fit?
Jack, who would be your best candidate for Rosberg's successor?
I'd go with Bottas. I'd have Bottas move from, I know he's signed with Williams, but I'd have Bottas move to Mercedes, and Mercedes trade Wehrlein for Bottas, put Wehrlein in the Williams, and probably give Williams some kind of discount on the engine deal.
I mean, the problem that Williams would have, if they put Wehrlein in there in place of Bottas, if Bottas was to go to Mercedes, you've got a team that's combined of only 21 race experience, because you've got Wehrlein, who's only raced with Manor, and Lance Stroll, who will be coming into Formula 1 next year. But I suppose 2 good drivers potentially in that Williams team, if Bottas does get the nod.
And I think it'll be interesting, if that does happen, Williams haven't exactly been on top of their game this year. It'll be interesting to see what car they'd bring next year. And if they do get Wehrlein and they've got Stroll already, it'd be interesting to see what those young drivers could do.
In terms, who would you prefer to have in that seat, Kathy?
I actually quite like the sound of Alonso. I think in the Mercedes he would be really, really good, but then obviously he is contracted with McLaren, so that does present difficulties. And then sort of like if he went to McLaren, then if he went to Mercedes, then who would McLaren get? So it does sort of, getting a driver out of the contract brings up problems further down the line.
And the thing is, if Alonso does decide to go, it's sponsors go with him as well, and McLaren need to think very, very carefully in terms of whether they should. If they think they'll benefit more with Alonso going to Mercedes, but as like you said, who's going to fill in Alonso's seat at McLaren alongside Stoffel van Dorn? But I don't really know, because Jenson Button doesn't want to come back, and I don't really know who would want to drive for McLaren.
It could be because McLaren's Honda engine, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a Honda engine still. Yeah.
With that Japanese influence, could see Kobayashi coming back.
I don't know, because I think the reason why Kobayashi came back into the Caterham seat after a year out was because he managed to get sponsors through funding from fans in his home country. So, to be honest, I don't see that happening for Kobayashi, unfortunately. I think they need somebody really, really strong. I mean, I don't know who.
I think obviously Britain's gone. I think maybe Mercedes, McLaren should go down the route of Paul di Resta.
Yeah.
When he was in F1, he was a decent driver for Force India. His name's been bandied around, and obviously in English team we want more British drivers in the paddock, and we're losing Button. So it looks like it's just going to be Hamilton next season, so hopefully we'll have another one in there.
Yeah. How does that impact on the Mercedes team in general, not just on Lewis? In terms of their approach for next year, because surely it's not going to be the same without Rosberg.
I think it's put them into panic stations at the moment, trying to find a driver. That's where I think, I don't want to say, it's difficult to say, but I think it was a bit unfair of Rosberg to do this at such short notice after most drivers have now been contracted. Mercedes kind of left out there to drive because they've got no drivers to go to.
And it must have come to a shock because there was a video of Rosberg signing a contract this season with Toto Wolff. They had a handshake and a little smile on their face, but I think he told Toto Wolff like a couple of days after the race. Obviously came to a shock to him. He tried to persuade Rosberg to not retire, but obviously his mind was made up. So, but will it favour Hamilton next year? Well, it depends what the driver is. If it's a pedigree driver like Alonso, I don't see Vettel moving, but if Vettel wanted to move there, then obviously they'll have to give them they'll have to give both cars the equal amount of chance to win the championship.
My point of view on Vettel is I'm pretty sure he wants to win the championship together with Ferrari. That's what Schumacher did, because when Schumacher won his first 2 years with Benetton, in his last 2 years with the team before he moved to Ferrari, he had an intent of winning the World Championship with Ferrari as well, and he went on to win 5 consecutive World Championships. I think for Vettel, for me, it's going to be a tall order for Vettel to do that, but I'm pretty sure he will want to win the championship with Ferrari one day. Whether it'll be next year or the year after remains to be seen. I think I haven't presented my say on who should drive a Mercedes. I mean, for logical reasons, I'd say Pascal Wehrlein, and the reason why I say that is because the fact that he's drove for the Mercedes team in DTM, which he won in 2015, and the fact he's driven for a team that's not the most competitive, but has managed to get really good performance out of that car, and got that elusive championship point in Austria, I feel he could, in the long term, be a good candidate to race for Mercedes. Thing about Rosberg, because when Rosberg drove for Williams before he went to Mercedes, then it took him time when he came to Mercedes to settle in. But I suppose he got very much going when the V6 era began.
Yeah, I mean, when he joined Mercedes, obviously they weren't the power they were. I mean, I think it was Schumacher and Rosberg had a lot of technical issues. Obviously, the car wasn't as good as it was now. But as obviously to win the World Championship means being the best car. So obviously Rosberg in the last 3 years has been in the top team, performing pretty much week in week out, and being pipped to the title. So he's won this one. But yeah, I think it's alright getting Wehrlein, but how long is this Mercedes dominance going to last? And do they want to win World Championships now? if they do, then I think they need to bring in an experienced candidate like Alonso.
Surely they can't emulate what they've already achieved in the past 3 years with that many race wins.
It's going to be hard. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next season? The resurgence of McLaren, Ferrari's going to be strong, Red Bull are coming back.
Force India
as well, and Williams, they could be a force next season if they keep Bottas. So it depends if they want to cash in on World Championships or develop a young driver for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Just looking through the stats for Rosberg, 11 years in Formula 1. Beginning his career with Williams in 2006, he set the fastest lap of the race in the Bahrain Grand Prix, as well as a points finish in 7th. 2007, he stayed with Williams for 4 years before moving to the Mercedes team alongside Michael Schumacher for 2010. It took him until 2012 Chinese Grand Prix to achieve not only his first pole position but his first race win as well. So when Hamilton arrived, that's when he started to win more races and achieve more pole positions, and as I've already mentioned before, the V6 era very much benefited both Rosberg and Mercedes. Achieving 30 pole positions and 23 race wins in all, finishing second twice in 2014 and 2015, and obviously this year he's won the World Championship in Abu Dhabi with 9 wins. To be honest, I don't really see Mercedes getting 19 wins next season with Hamilton and whoever is going to race alongside him, because I think Red Bull and Ferrari will have something to say on that. Cathy?
Yeah, I don't think Mercedes can replicate what they've done this year. I think it was like that obviously at the top of the game at the minute, but with the rule changes and tyres and things like that, and as Callum said, like Ferrari and Red Bull getting stronger, I really don't think they can do that again.
No. And to be honest, I really don't see Mercedes replicating something like that. And it's not really like, I can't see like another Williams or another Red Bull domination. You know, like in the Williams era when, you know, whether it was Prost, Hill, Mansell or Senna, they were still able to get the best out of that car. But to be honest, Formula 1's a different world to what it was 25 years ago, with dominance being such a pinnacle factor within the sport. How close can Red Bull and Ferrari challenge to Mercedes?
I think. See, the problem they're not the same cars they are next year as they are this year, because there's completely new tyres, new aero packages for every car, and bigger changes than any year previously, just because the tyres are now wider, and they've made the cars wider as well, haven't they?
They've made the side pods wider, they've made the rear wings lowered but wider as well. So
it could be interesting to see whether Mercedes can actually emulate the dominance they have now with a new aero package, because Red Bull have always been strong on their aero package, so if they can really nail it this time, we could see them up there.
And just go through Rosberg's teammate comparisons throughout his career. Numerous number of teammates, including Mark Webber in his first year, then it's Alex Wurz, then Kazuki Nakajima, Michael Schumacher, and then ultimately Lewis Hamilton. 2016 was by far the most successful year. 385 points, that's 63 points more than he achieved last year. The highest points that he got with the Williams came to a total of 34.5 in 2009. He's achieved a lot of points and a lot of points finishes. In a Williams car, you know, he got his first podium finish in Australia, 2008. I'm happy for what he's done. Are you happy for what he's done?
Well, he came to the sport to win the World Championship, and that's what he's done. I mean, a lot of good drivers like Felipe Massa, really good driver, but never managed to win the World Championship. Mark Webber never managed to win it. David Coulthard never managed to win it. So he's fulfilled his dream, and that's what he's done. So I think he's left the sport on a high. Yeah.
For you folks to share your opinions on Rosberg or any F1 topic you wish us to discuss, do please tweet in at Brayford Radio or send us messages or posts via the Facebook pages of Formula Tom or Brayford Radio. Here is your first question of the night. When was the last year that the grid competed without the reigning world champion? When was the last year that the grid competed without the reigning world champion? And the answer will be given to you after Calvin Harris's Acceptable in the 80s. This is Tom Cairns on Formula. Tom, you are listening to Brayford Radio. And that was Acceptable in the 80s by Calvin Harris. The question we asked a few minutes ago was, when was the last year that the grid competed without the reigning world champion? Guys, do you have any guesses?
The only one I know was Jochen Rindt won it in 70, and then he wasn't in 71, so I'm going to say 71.
Okay.
I'm going to go 1980.
I'll say 83.
I can tell you the answer is actually 1994, because Alan Prost won the 93 championship, but just before he finished the season he announced his retirement from the sport. So he was not the reigning, well, he was the reigning world champion going into 94, but he didn't compete. So 1994 was the last year that Alan Prost, 1994 was the last year that the Formula 1 raced without the reigning world champion. Which meant that the Williams team, who won the Constructors' Championship, or the drivers, they raced with cars numbers of 0 and 2, not 1 and 2. Because like in the old days, they used to have car numbers 1 for the reigning world champion and 2 for whatever driver the reigning world champion is racing alongside within that team is driving for. So if you said 1994, very well done. The questions come in and saying, from my mum, question for the show, do you think Alonso will join Mercedes for 2017?
The rivalry between Hamilton and Alonso has got me saying no.
The thing with that is though, I think the relationship's improved since when they last raced, because in the Vettel era when he won 4 world championships, Hamilton kept saying Alonso is the best driver in the paddock. So there is respect there, I think. And I think it's healable. I think Hamilton was quite young then, and he has matured a lot. And I think Alonso does respect him as a driver. He's won world championship. He's proven. So I think it could work. To be fair.
But do you think Mercedes are going to want another? I know there might not be a big one, but do you think they want another rivalry like they had this year? Because
I don't think they'll like. It's not an ideal scenario, but if they want to win world championships, then the teammates who are vying for world championships aren't going to like each other.
You have to remember it's professional and not personal between the drivers. They have to, race with heart. But it just depends how Alonso would get on with the Mercedes team, because I think he only raced once under a team with a Mercedes engine, and that was with the McLaren when Alonso and Hamilton partnered together in 2007. But could they be teammates again in 2017? Who knows? I think a confirmation will be confirmed. I'll probably say before Christmas Day. But that's my guess anyway. Questioning from Ken's JS. I don't think Mercedes will be worried in the slightest about Rosberg leaving. Best car, best team, any half-deck drive will do. What do you think? He doesn't think that Mercedes will be worried in the slightest.
I don't think they'll be worried. I think they'll be frustrated because they'd had a plan going forward for next year, and now they've got to change it because they had a plan for Rosberg, but that plan may not fit a new driver.
Callum, do you think Mercedes should be worried?
Well, they've lost the world championship, so I think they should be concerned. I don't think they're going to worry, if that's the right word. I don't think they're going to be like, oh my god, Rosberg's left, what are we going to do? I think they could literally ring up I think they could go into any team, into any driver and say, do you want to drive with us? And pretty much I think everyone in the paddock, because they want to win world championships, will say yes.
Kathy, do you think Mercedes should be worried about the situation that they're in at the moment?
I don't think worried as such, but they should definitely, I think they'll probably be a bit concerned because obviously the driver market there's not much movement going on there, and they have got a massive hole left by Rosberg, so it is big shoes to fill and they do want to win championships, so it's going to be a really tough decision for them to fill that.
I don't think Mercedes should be too worried about it because I'm not expecting them to be as dominant as they were this year or in the past 3 years. actually, but it just depends how they can approach this next season, really. Because I remember when Red Bull won their first 2 championships, the third year, which they did win the championship, they had to really fight for it with Vettel and Webber, because Vettel only won once in the first 13 races of that year, but he won the next 4, and he went on to win the title in the final race in Brazil. I don't know how Mercedes should approach it, because I don't think their expectations should be set in terms of where they're going to be in comparison to the others. But we need to see how testing goes in Barcelona at the end of February. We want to go on now about 2016 this year. Who did well and who did not? Well, who really surprised us, would you say, Jack?
I'd say Force India, honestly, because they did alright last year, but Sergio Perez especially has really pushed forward this year. So I was really surprised by his performances this year.
Callum, who impressed you the most this year?
Other than Rosberg, who did well, I would say Verstappen.
Yeah, I mean, that's no surprise, really.
It's not a surprise, but like I'd say he had a lot of pressure going onto him being a young driver. And I think he's excelled better than anyone would do. And I'd say I'll go along with Perez as well. Perez has done very well, got a few podiums. He could be a shout for the Mercedes seat as well.
Cathy, who impressed you the most this year, and who do you think has improved from last year?
Improved from last year, I think McLaren definitely. Because where did they come last year? Yeah, they came 9th last year in the championship, and this year they've come 6th. So I think as a team they've done really well, because last year they did struggle a lot. So I think McLaren most improved, and I think Perez and Verstappen definitely have impressed me the most.
Yeah, going back to McLaren, last year McLaren finished 9th with 27 points. This year they finished 6th with 76, so 49 points better off than they were last year. So good job from McLaren with the Honda engine improving. Next year, hopefully can get maybe at least 100 points next year with Alonso and Van Dorn, providing Alonso stays, of course.
Yeah, I think Honda will have been working throughout this year on that new engine, trying to fine-tune it, find the sweet spots within that engine, because I think they have the possibility to really make a championship-winning engine.
Callum, McLaren improved this year, but I'm just thinking about looking at the others as well. Force India that we've mentioned, how impressive have you been with Force India this year?
Yeah, Force India have obviously their progress has been gradual. So they've in the last few years they've obviously stepped up to now a top 4 team in 2016, beating Williams, McLaren, Toro Rosso, who have been in the spot for a very long time. I can only see them going up with the more funding they get. They're attracting better drivers now. Perez is a very good driver, and I think they could, I wouldn't say challenge for a world championship, but maybe in 3 or 4 years, if they get the funding and the drivers, I think they could have a real shot at it.
Yeah, providing the regulations go their way, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would say, because they've got 2 podium finishes this year, maybe get 3 or 4 podiums next year.
Yeah, maybe even try and nick a race win or 2, and hopefully, if it depends on conditions, obviously. If it's raining, they could maybe get if they have a good car in the wet, they could really challenge for a few race wins in there.
I think it depends on the track as well, because there's certain tracks they are. I can't remember if it was this year, but I know that the car's always been quick.
I mean, I'm very, very happy with Force India. I mean, if they do very well next year, and perhaps exceed the points tally, because they've got this year they got 173 points. So if they can get at least 200 points with their newest arrival of Esteban Ocon in the team, I think that'll be a really good season for Force India. Get maybe 3 or 4 podiums wherever they may be. I think they'll do well. Let's compare the Drivers' Championship from this year to 2015. Hamilton obviously won the championship last year, and Rosberg finished 2nd. This year, the opposite. Ricciardo, who finished 8th last year, finished 3rd this year. Because last year, Daniel Ricciardo had 92 points. This year, 256, including a race win in Malaysia. Christian Horner said before the start of this year that Red Bull would have an improved car in the second half of the year, and he wasn't wrong, was he, Catherine?
No, he wasn't. Red Bull have done really well this year compared to where they were last year, and I think it helps that they've actually got Verstappen in the team, because I think it pushes Ricciardo on as well, because he's a very good driver anyway, but I think he's sort of more determined to do well now. So Red Bull have definitely improved on where they were last year, and hopefully they can do the same next year.
And Jack, how would you compare last year to this year?
I'm really impressed with Red Bull, because it's nice to see them pushing up there again, because they were a championship winning team, and then they had an off season or two, and it's nice to see them pushing up. But even with the drama that went halfway through the season with Kvyat and Verstappen moving around, I think they've coped quite well this season.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very impressed with a lot of the teams this year. I mean, Manor improved this year in terms of their car performance compared to the 2014 car they had last year. That was nowhere near to the pace of any of the other cars. This year they managed to perhaps compete with the Saubers and Renaults in terms of qualifying pace. So very, very good from the Manor this year, because I think Pascal Wehrlein got into Q2 6 times this year in dry conditions. So that's pretty impressive, really.
It is very impressive. It's good to see that the gap isn't as big anymore, because I remember last year there was a couple of times where their drivers were having to start from the pit lane because they were that far off in qualifying. They got disqualified from the actual grid, so they had to start from the pit. So it's nice to see them pushing up there and actually having not all equal, but a lot more equal teams.
Yeah, because I'm very, very happy the Man are doing well. I mean, we're no longer having this Lotus Virgin Hispania sort of qualifying battle where it's just battling at the back all the time. We want to see teams at least competing in the midfield to really challenge for a genuine points position at every race, really. I don't know what's going to happen next year because of so many driver changes. You know, Magnussen going to Haas, Van Dorn being promoted to the McLaren team, Ocon going to Force India, whoever's going to be racing alongside Lewis at Mercedes. I mean, a lot can happen in pre-season testing, but pre-season testing is different to racing, so we can't assume that pre-season testing pace is going to be emulated in the races for 2017. Just one final thing about the championship. Obviously, Haas, you know, good first season. Only had 1 point in the last 12 races though for Haas. But we thought at the start of the season that perhaps get a lot of points at the beginning, but just sort of die down a little bit from challenging for points. But Gutierrez a couple of times this year in Monza and Suzuka managed to get his Haas into Q3 despite not getting any points this year. How will Magnussen fare now alongside Grosjean, now that he's in another new team?
I think he'll fare quite well, because I think Haas they'll have learned a lot from this year. They'll have learned how well they did at the start, how they faded off. They'll have learned how to combat that, and I think they'll do have done a lot of research, and I think they'll bring quite a strong car next year.
Haas, how do you think they'll improve next year? Do you think they will improve next year, Catherine?
I think they're going to improve next year, because they've sort of seen this year it was like a testing ground for them almost. They've done well in the first race in the season. Obviously they did drop off the second half of the season, but now they know what it's like at those races. I think they know what they need to work on, so I think they will improve.
Yeah. Will they score more points next year than this year?
I think they will. In their debut season they got 29 points, which not many teams do that. And they've had a good start. They remind me of a bit like a Force India when they started. Force India obviously came to sport through Jordan,
Midland and Spiker.
Yeah, pretty much. And they've stayed in the sport, so I can see them a long-term team coming in. And the American market is a big market to hit on, with the new track being there. It's quite popular with all the drivers. The fans are obviously up for F1. They have all their NASCAR, but the F1 culture in America is growing. I think the Haas team could do that.
Yeah. If you have any thoughts on anything that's happened in the F1 news lately, or your views on the championship standings for this year in comparison to last year, do please tweet in at Brayford Radio, or send in your posts or messages to the Facebook pages of Formula Tom or Brayford Radio, along with answering our second question tonight. And the second question is, how many times has a German driver won the title? How many times has a German driver won the title? The answer will be given after M83's Midnight City. This is Tom Kent on Formula Tom. You are listening to Brayford Radio. And that was Midnight City by M83. The question we asked before we left was how many times has a German driver won the title? Did we have any guesses, guys?
I said 12 because I only think it's been Schumacher, Vettel and Rosberg that have won it.
I said 15.
And I say 13.
Okay. My mum has gone the other number, actually, of 14. So I can tell you, one of you is right. You're right, Kathy. Well done.
Yay.
It's 12. Yeah, it's 12 because Michael Schumacher's won 7 World Championships, Sebastian Vettel has won 4, and Nico Rosberg has won 1. So 3 German drivers in the history of Formula 1 has won the Drivers' World Championship with a combined total of 12 World Championships. So if you did say 12, very well done indeed. We've got some comments coming in, and one is saying, how do you think Lance Stroll will perform driving for Williams in 2017?
I think he'll do well. He's got experience in the lower formulas and GP and all that. I think that it's a new talent to the sport, and he's a young driver, and we've seen young drivers do very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'll have the confidence to go in and challenge for points.
Callum, how will Lance Stroll fare next year?
I think he'd do well. I think if Bottas stays, he could learn a lot of him and improve him as a driver. But if Bottas leaves, he could be the number 1 driver at Williams for the future. And I see him getting maybe not 100 points, maybe around about the 70 mark, 75 mark. I think that's fair for Williams.
So how many again, sorry?
70 to 75, I
70
think.
to 75 points.
I think in the Williams car, I think that's doable.
In his first year, I think that's pretty doable. It just depends on the pecking order, really.
Yeah, it depends on how well the other teams have stepped up, and if Williams are going to step up.
I mean, it could be like I think it'll be topsy-turvy in the first few races, but I think when the season calms down like it normally does, I think you could see him in the lower bound of the points, but I could be wrong. Come March, April or May. There's a topic that we want to go to now on McLaren's newest executive director. That is Zach Brown, a former who is currently an American businessman who obviously used to race in British GT.
Yes.
In the most recently. Yeah. What do you make of the arrival of Zach Brown? Because surely he's going to have a huge influence on that McLaren team in the long term.
I think it's very similar to the new owners of F1. It seems like McLaren have got him. This guy, from what I've seen, has some area in marketing. So it's possible McLaren are going for more of a brand push, like with the American audiences. But I think it'll be interesting to see, with his racing knowledge, what he can bring to the team.
Yeah, because he had, I'm pretty sure he had offers from Liberty Media to be working with them as well, didn't he? But can he sort of maybe have an influence with Liberty Media, even though he's part of one of the teams in the paddock?
I think so. I think he will have some influence there. Maybe not a big one, but I think maybe some kind of like branding influence with getting McLaren's name maybe higher up than maybe it should be, depending on results.
Mm-hmm. Callum, how much of an influence do you feel that Zach Brown could have on Formula 1, let alone with McLaren?
I think he could have a good outcome on Formula 1. I think he obviously has seen the Haas product, and I think he sees McLaren as obviously a bigger team than Haas. With all due respect to Haas, but I think he could tap down that line and of the American audience, get them on board, get a lot of funding from the American market, and maybe make McLaren into the team that they should be, because they should be challenging for world championships. They should be with Ferrari, Red Bull, in my opinion.
Kathy, Zach Brown, obviously an American businessman with money that he could perhaps bring into the team. How is he going to fare with the likes of Alonso, with somebody who has 2 world championships under his belt, but he hasn't won a championship in 10 years? Can he perhaps maybe help Alonso get another championship this time with McLaren?
I think so. Well, not sort of in the next few years. I think it will take a while to get McLaren to the top again. But seeing as he has got money to bring in and he's used to business, I think he possibly will sort of treat it as more business type thing, get more money into the team, more revenue, which will help them develop the car more and get them nearer the top where, as Cam said, they should be.
This is, according to Sky Sports, this was Zak Brown's reaction to the appointment. He said that in my new role I'll be able to combine my absolute passion with my unparalleled area of expertise, respectively motorsport and marketing, while ensuring that the two stay totally aligned. But McLaren confirmed that in the wake of Dennis's exit, the process of identifying and recruiting a new group chief executive officer will continue. Sources revealed to Sky Sports last week that Brown had received offers from both McLaren and Liberty Media, the sport's proposed new owners. The American is thought to have informed F1's commercial rights holder over the weekend of his intention to take the McLaren job. McLaren have described Brown's appointment as a significant part of a restructuring programme, but will align the group's commercial and strategic operations relating to achieving success in Formula One. Well, he's very much going to be part of reshaping the management structure at McLaren, because Ron Dennis, we know he's obviously been part of that McLaren squad for more than 30 years. But now that he's left, is that a good thing or a bad thing in long term? Because surely he's going to have to maybe support Zak Brown in some way.
I think it'll be difficult in the short run for the team to adjust. I think having Ron Dennis there for so long, I think it's going to be difficult for them to adjust. But I think they should be able to do it successfully. But it just may take a bit of time.
Kathy, do you think Ron Dennis should still support Zak Brown now that he's in not exactly not Ron Dennis' successor in the role that Dennis was in, but can he maybe support him to help McLaren get back to the top, or do you think he should just step aside and just let him do what he needs to do?
In some respects, you do think that Dennis should help him for a little while, mentor him to get him used to the team. But then, on the other hand, it's well, he's been at the team for over 30 years. He's had his chance to get the team to the top, and now he needs to leave and let the new management take over and do what they can to the team. So I think it would be better if he did step aside completely and let them get on with it.
Colin?
I think Zak Brown obviously you can't beat Ron Dennis's experience in F1, and Zak Brown could learn a thing or two of him. But I think he's his own man pretty much. He's a successful businessman, he knows what he's doing, he's passionate about F1, having raced in cars and stuff before. And I think McLaren just need a bit of a shake-up. They kind of need to their car the last 3 years has been pretty much a write-off for McLaren for their standards. So they need to kind of get new people into it, and Zak Brown at the top will, I think, lead McLaren to a successful future.
Do you see McLaren? I mean, I think we mentioned about where McLaren could be, but if McLaren had an expectation, what would you go for? I mean, not just in terms of points, but race performance. What is it that they need to improve in car performance-wise?
I think they need to improve. They need to start getting into Q3 a lot more. They did get it a lot better this year, but I think they need to more consistently get Q3 race after race after race, and then hold those positions and get reliability up.
Yeah. Callum, would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think they should, looking at the table, I don't think they could challenge the top 4 teams. Force India is a bit of a push for me, but maybe they could be the 6th best team, challenging Lotus and Toro Rosso. This year, depending on how good the car is. And I think if they keep Alonso, that is crucial.
Yeah.
I think.
Kathy?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if they do want to improve, they do need to keep Alonso, and I think they do need to their target should be Q3 consistently and getting into the points consistently. They have got a lot better with reliability, because last year we saw them changing engines all the time and getting ridiculous grid penalties. So we haven't seen that as much this year. So hopefully they can continue improving their reliability and just staying in the points.
Yeah. And whilst we've been discussing about Zak Brown and McLaren, you guys can be involved in the show via Twitter, sending in your tweets at Brayford Radio, or send us posts or messages via the Facebook pages of Formula Tom or Brayford Radio, as well as answering our final question for tonight. The question is, what year did McLaren last win the Constructors' Championship? Simple. What year did McLaren last win the Constructors' Championship? Okay, the answer will be given after Back and Turn overdrives us. You ain't saying nothing yet. This is Tom Kent on Formula Tom. You're listening to Brayford Radio. And that was You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet by Bachman Turner Overdrive. A question we asked a few moments ago was, what year did McLaren last win the Constructors' Championship? Did you have any answers?
I think it's 2007 when Hamilton and Alonso came second and third.
I'm going to go 2006.
2005?
My mum went in with 98. And once again, one of you are correct. It's my mum. Yeah, my mum got it right. So if you said 1998, for wherever you are, very well done indeed. We want to quickly go now. Look at comparison this year between Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel. Looking at the races that Verstappen is in, under the first 4 races he raced with Toro Rosso, before replacing Kvyat at Red Bull from Spain onwards. If you were to compare his 17 races with Red Bull to the 17 races from Spain to the last race of the season in Abu Dhabi, Verstappen actually scored more points during that period than Vettel has. I mean, it's quite extraordinary, really, isn't it, for a driver of 18 to 19 years of age to get the better of a 4-time world champion, although Vettel finished ahead of him throughout the whole season in terms of the drivers.
I think Vettel's had a very frustrating season this year. It's not fallen for him this year. I think he came into this season thinking he's going to really, maybe not challenge the Mercedes completely, but at least challenge higher up, and it's just not worked for him this season.
Callum, how would you compare Verstappen's performances in comparison to Vettel's? Because Verstappen has got better, even in the Toro Rosso, and then the promotion to Red Bull, where he did so successful, winning first time out in Spain for the team.
Yeah, it reminds me of, obviously Vettel and Verstappen are obviously different parts of their career. Vettel's 4-time world champion. Verstappen's quite not a rookie, I'd say. He's on the path to being a world champion. Yeah. I think like Verstappen obviously would have pipped Vettel he would have been ahead of him if he raced in the Red Bull for the entire season. And I think they're both kind of similar drivers. I think Verstappen is showing sparks of what Vettel was in his younger days in the Toro Rosso when he won at Monza in the rain. And I think Max Verstappen could look up to Vettel and what he's done, and maybe surpass him.
Because I'm pretty sure he's learning from what Vettel has done during his career as well. So maybe he's taking some tips from what he's watched on TV. Kathy, how would you compare Verstappen's performance to Vettel gradually over the course of the season? Because it has been a rise from him.
Yeah, he has done incredibly well this season. Like we've already said, sort of in the past, what Verstappen is doing coming into Red Bull as a young driver is incredible. Like he's clearly very, very talented. I think it helps that Red Bull are improving their car, and sort of plays to his advantage as well that Ferrari weren't on their game this year. I mean, pre-season testing they looked fast, but coming into the actual racing, I think it has shocked people that Ferrari haven't been challenging for race wins. I don't think it helps that sort of team members like James Allen, was it? James Allison, sorry. Yeah,
James
that's
Allison.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he left halfway through the campaign for family circumstances.
Yeah, so I mean, things like that, obviously, it sort of doesn't play to Ferrari's advantages. But Verstappen is a very talented driver, so can't take that away from him.
No. I mean, Vettel this year, if you compare his teammate comparison with Raikkonen since he joined Ferrari, last year he got the better of him by far in terms of points, out qualifying him and out finishing him. This year, it's been very much more or less I wouldn't say contrast, but very much on terms in terms of Raikkonen, because Raikkonen has finished ahead of Vettel on more occasions. Well, no, sorry, Vettel has Raikkonen, but in terms of qualifying, Raikkonen's been getting the better of Vettel, but in a lot of the races that Vettel should have been doing better, Raikkonen's just been finishing and scoring points.
Yeah, Raikkonen's had some good qualifying. I think Raikkonen's problem this year, his racing wasn't, it was consistent like always, but it's just, he wasn't converting those good positions from qualifying. He just wasn't pushing them into the race.
Callum, how do you think Vettel and Raikkonen's rivalry within the team has shaped up the pecking order for this year in comparison to last year? Because they were by far the second best team to Mercedes last year, but
I think with the reemergence of Red Bull, I don't think Ferrari have had that many answers to them. Pretty much, they haven't been in race pace. They haven't really been up with the Red Bulls. I think Raikkonen sometimes is a bit cautious in races. In the last race, I think he had time to overtake, but he didn't want to take the risk. And he's a bit more measured, whereas Vettel's, I think, a bit more adventurous in his driving, I think, and he's a bit, what's the word? Like he's a bit like not forceful, like
robust.
Yeah, like that. He's kind of he'll go for it when he sees an opportunity, which is like a real racer. I think Raikkonen is a very good racer. He's just a bit more cautious, and I think maybe in the long term, I think they need to kind of look at that and look at the position of Raikkonen as and then maybe get someone else in. I think.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to Verstappen, Ricciardo has been getting the better of him in most of the qualifying and in most of the races this year, but bearing in mind Verstappen's fighting spirit cannot be extinguished.
Yeah, a young driver. I mean, there's no fear in them. Like they see an opportunity, they'll take it. He hasn't got the experience of failing or crashing. He's had some big crashes, but he hasn't had many of them. And he's like what Hamilton was, Vettel was, and Verstappen's doing now. I think it's kind of a mould of the modern driver, pretty much. I think. In nowadays.
And Kathy, how do you think Verstappen has coped with his team against his teammate in comparison to how Vettel's competed against Raikkonen?
I think Ricciardo and Verstappen and Vettel and Raikkonen, I think they are good pairings together because I feel like there's a respect between them in the team, so it means there sort of isn't like big arguments, and I think they get on, which is helpful to the team and helps the team develop. In Red Bull, I think they push each other on because they're both very competitive and they both want to do well and win world championships. So in Red Bull, it helps that they've got two young drivers that will push each other forward. And in Ferrari, I think the fact that they do respect each other so much as drivers, I don't think they're pushing each other as much as they are in Red Bull because they have both won championships. So I think it is sort of a more laid-back approach.
Yeah, I'd love to go on, but that is the end of the show, unfortunately, guys. Thank you for listening and sending your tweets and answers this evening. Subscribe. Do make sure to join in next week's show where me, Callum, Jack Murphy and Martin Bulbrook will be with me chatting on our build-up for next year. From me, Callum, Kathy and Jack Fisher, have a good weekend and we'll talk to you again next week. This is Tom Cairns on Formula Tom. You are listening to Brayford Radio.